It's actually the story I wanted to look at. The story I wanted to look at tonight was in 1 Samuel 24. In verse 2 of chapter 24, Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. And he came to the sheepfolds by the road where there was a cave. Saul went in to attend to his needs. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. Then the men of David said to him, "This is the day which the Lord said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, that you may do to him as it seems good to you." And David arose and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Now it happened afterward that David's heart troubled him because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to the men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord." So David restrained his servants with these words. He didn't allow them to raise their hand against Saul. Saul got up from the cave, went on his way. David arose afterward and went out to the cave and called out to Saul, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down. David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, 'Indeed, David seeks your harm'? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave. And someone urged me to kill you, but my eye spared you. And I said, well, I will not stretch out my hand against the Lord, my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed." Verse 12, "The Lord judge between you and me. Let the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you." The last phrase of verse 13, "My hand shall not be against you." This story goes on. It's just one of those bizarre stories. To give you a little bit of context, Saul, of course, is king. And there have been prophetic words now that God has shifted his attention from Saul to David. He's actually been anointed king. He's proven himself in battle. He killed the lion, he killed the bear when no one was watching, which qualified him to kill Goliath when two nations were watching. The women of the city, the women of the nation, were so inspired by David's conquest that they would write songs. And they would sing these songs, and these songs would say, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his 10,000s. Saul, as a father, would have delighted in his son's excellence. But because he had the mindset of an elder brother, one who was very insecure, driven by competition, the success of another is very threatening. And when the success of another is very threatening to any one of us, it means jealousy is always within reach. It is always very possible to lean into jealousy and to act out of that jealousy. And so Saul was very jealous of David. David had the favor of the people. David had the favor of God. He's been able to watch how God is with him. He was able to see how David would play a harp, for example, and the evil spirit that was released against Saul, that torment was driven from him. He was able to observe and watch just this God favor thing on David, and it so provoked him to anger. If you remember the phrase, Samuel made this a statement to Saul. When Saul disobeyed the Lord spoke to him and said, "You're to give everything that you obtained in this particular conquest, the king, the choices of the animals, everything's to be given to the Lord, to be sacrificed." And Saul kept back some of the best, the finest stuff, he said, as a special sacrifice to the Lord. But he disobeyed the Lord, and he turned it into a religious excuse. And so the Lord spoke through Samuel and said, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. It's really interesting now. Rebellion, disobeying God when God gave him a directive, a command. He disobeyed that, and the Lord called it rebellion and said that's the breeding ground for witchcraft is rebellion.